My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director and CEO and founder of Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories Incorporated. That's our new name. And we are doing a Zoom interview with, sir, what is your name?
Michael J. Chagnon.
Right.
Senior.
Senior.
Okay, and when is your birthday?
1/2/28.
Okay. And what is your address?
6202 Alexandria Circle, Fort Pierce, Florida. 34982.
Okay, and who is the other person there in the room with you?
I'm sorry?
Catherine, identify yourself.
That's Catherine, my wife.
Okay,
Chagnon.
that's good. Let me get my timer going here. Okay, all right. What branch of the service were you in?
Navy.
Okay, and what year did you enter the Navy?
When I was 17,
Okay,
1945.
okay. What was your rank when you separated?
Storekeeper, second class.
What were you doing just prior to going into the service? How old were you?
I was working for a company named Raytheon.
Before you went in the service, not after, Jim.
No, before I went to
Oh,
the
okay.
service.
Yeah, right.
Raytheon.
Come on, Catherine, keep up.
I'm sorry?
No, that's okay. All right. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Okay. All
I
right.
had 4 other brothers in the Navy already, and I
Oh.
enlisted.
Okay. And where were you when you enlisted?
In Boston, Massachusetts. I enlisted in the Navy. They put me on a train and took me to Grand Central Station. Off that, and put me on a train to Union Station in Washington, D.C. And then from there to Williamsburg, Virginia, to Camp Perry, which is on the York River, for my boot training.
Why did you join that branch?
I'm sorry?
Why did you join the Navy? Why? Why didn't you choose another branch?
Why did you join?
I joined the Navy because I said, as I said, I had 4 other brothers in the service in the Navy.
Oh, okay.
My brother Arthur was an armed guard on merchant ships. My brother John was on a destroyer. My brother Tom was on a Talagi, which is an aircraft carrier. And my brother Paul was on a minesweeper
Okay.
in the South Pacific.
Gotcha. So tell me about basic training. What was boot camp like?
I was Camp Perry in Williamsburg, Virginia. They taught me how to crawl through red clay mud, and they taught me how to march up and down a hill, or down a hill and then back up a hill and end up in perfect formation. And then they gave me IQ tests to determine what branch or what they would put me in. And it was clerical. And they, after 2 months at Camp Perry, they sent me to Washington, D.C. for 10 months, where I served in the Navy Department in the building that was constructed during the First World War, right beside the reflecting pool. And I remained there until I went out to the West Coast.
Okay, and where were you?
I'm
What
sorry?
was the name? What was the name of the place where you did your basic training? Camp Perry?
Williamsburg, Virginia, Camp
Okay.
Perry.
Okay, cool. So now you said you went to the West Coast. Where did you go?
I went from Washington, D.C. To San Diego by train.
Okay. And so after basic training, you had the training for your job. Where did you get that?
I didn't have any training for the job. What they gave me was basically that they gave all recruits a IQ test that showed that I had a propensity for doing clerical work.
Okay,
That's how come they sent me to Washington, D.C.
right. Okay, so now you're in San Diego.
I'm in San Diego, the receiving ship out there, and they assigned me to the ARL, the USS Ascari ARL 33.
Okay. And that's a ship? That was a ship?
That's a ship.
What kind of ship was that?
It was an ARL, Auxiliary Repair Landing.
Never heard of it. Thank you very much. Okay. And
But it basically was a conversion of a LST. They took the tank deck and they made a machine shop out of it. They put in lathes, milling machines, band saws, and various other machine shop equipment.
Okay. All right.
And what we did was service small craft. We reinstalled or gray marine engines, or we put new propellers on and new propeller shafts.
Cool. All right. Did you like your job?
I'm sorry?
Did you like your job? Did you like your job?
What was his job?
I was, as I told you, it was clerical, and I kept track in a ledger of the equipment that we had aboard ship.
Okay. Did you live on the ship?
I'm sorry?
Did you live on the ship or did you live on land on the base?
Where did you live? Aboard the ship? Or
Aboard the ship.
Okay. Okay. So where did you go on the ship? Where did you go?
In San Diego, the Ascari was tied up to two buoys in San Diego Harbor. I went aboard the ship, and we shortly thereafter we went up to Long Beach Naval Yard when we went into dry dock to have the bottom of the ship cleaned of barnacles and various other debris that it picks up.
Right.
You know,
Did you travel anywhere?
I went from the U.S. Ascari to the Naval Hospital out in Long Beach, where they removed the pilonidal cyst from my spine.
Oh boy. So how
Then
did
I went back, after I got discharged out of the hospital, I went back aboard the Ascari. We went out on maneuvers out of San Diego around San Clemente Island. And to be honest with you, I had the best fish fry I ever had in my life during that trip, quite honestly. Then we got orders to go to Pearl Harbor, and we left San Diego just before Christmas. We ended up in Pearl Harbor just before Christmas, and the new skipper, he was so upset with how he had been treated that we up anchored and we sailed for the Marshall Island groups. And we were, when we went, we had Christmas at sea. We went across the international date line on New Year's. We did not stop. We just continued on to the Marshall Island group,
Okay.
which contained Eniwetok and Bikini Atolls.
Okay.
And what had happened was that after the scientists weren't satisfied with blowing up Yucca Flats, Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Right.
So they took the Marshall Island group, which, as I said, contained Eniwetok and Pekini, and they moved the natives to the south. And then we proceeded to have all kinds of, well, from 1945 until 1952, atomic detonations in the air, and from 1952 until 1958, atomic detonations under the water, and from 1958, they came back to the salt mines of this country to continue their experiments.
Right. How was the food?
I'm sorry?
How was the food?
How was the food?
The food was excellent, as a matter of fact.
Was that injury that you had, where you said about your spine, was that service related?
No.
Oh.
It was a polynomial cyst is nothing but a ingrown hair that created the cyst.
Okay.
And when I went in the Naval Hospital to have it done, the healing process took 6 weeks instead of 6 months.
Oh, okay, good.
Because they developed a new procedure.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So, how long were you in the service? Were you in the service for 13 years?
No, I was only in the service when I enlisted. I enlisted on what they called a kiddie cruise. I was underage. I had to have the consent of my mother, because my father had passed away, and they had to discharge me when I turned 21 years old.
Okay. All right. So you only in for like 2 years?
3 years.
3 years. Okay. All right. So beyond when you went on, did you have any problem ever staying in touch with your family while you were in the service?
I'm sorry?
Did you have any communication problems reaching out to your family while you were on? Okay.
No.
Did you see any combat?
No.
Okay.
The only combat I saw was atomic explosions.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. Fine. Well, that's really the next thing is I'm trying to figure out if during your service career was anybody injured in your unit, and then you can go ahead and talk about the nuclear test.
The only injury we had, we were allowed shore leave over on the islands on Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoons, at which time we very often went in the ocean to look for cat eyes, which you could polish into all kinds of jewelry, cufflinks, tie clasps, that sort of thing. And one time at low tide, we crossed from Eniwetok over to Perry Island. And when the tide changed, it was kind of hectic trying to get back and to Eniwetok. Anyway, one of the fellas, a guy by the name of Shesla, was caught in the riptide and went out made a complete circle. Basically, he ended up where he started. Unfortunately, we tried to rescue him, and we were unsuccessful.
Oh, too bad. Okay.
That's the only casualty. That's the only casualty we had. However, I will tell you a little story about Chesler. He had created a still in one of the companionways. And during an inspection, the officers noticed this odor. Anyway, they retrieved the still that Chesler had left, and the whiskey, homebrew whiskey, they had a fine time that night. But that was the only casualty.
Okay, so tell me about the nuclear tests.
I'm sorry?
You were there when they were doing nuclear testing?
Nuclear, yes.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I was within when the test, for example, there was a radio tower built on Inuiatok and a radio tower built on Perry Island. And they put a span between the two towers. And one of the explosions was a suspension on the span. Well, when we were required, when an atomic test was imminent, to evacuate the island. And the ships were all marshaled in a circular file about right outside some 4 miles from where the explosion took place. We proceeded in a circular motion. The detonation took place roughly about 4 o'clock in the morning, and by noontime, we were back in the anchorage in Inuiatok. At one point, I was within 4 miles of an explosion, and the rest of the times it could have been anywhere from up to 30 miles away.
Right.
But anyway, during a detonation, everybody had to be evacuated and aboard ship. And the ships proceeded outside the area and circled in a 30-mile circle.
Okay.
And then we, by noontime, roughly after an explosion, we were back in the anchorage. Now the Russians were trying to penetrate the area constantly while we were there. And we had a line of destroyers, picker boats, that patrolled the area, try to keep shipping out of the out of the area. Anyway, one evening, general quarters sounded, and we all had to report to our battle stations. And what had happened is they had trapped a Russian submarine that penetrated into the vicinity of the test. But we let it go. Brought it to the surface and let it go.
Okay.
Then, after the task group that I was on disbanded, after the tests were over, we headed back to Pearl Harbor. On the way, when we left, where we were, where the test took place, we were assigned to escort a couple of water tenders to Guam. Well, on the way to Guam, we hit the tail end of a typhoon. One of the water tenders broke down, and we had to put a tow line out to it and tow it to Guam. After we hit Guam, we left. We came to Pearl Harbor, and they would not let us into natural anchorage. They put us as far out from the regular points to a point where we had to put a Jacob's ladder over the side, have the deck crew use the means to get ashore, and then go down the thing and bring a ship-to-shore gangway back to the ship so that we could go ashore. The next day, they offloaded all of personnel on a ship, and the scientists went aboard with their Geiger counters, and they confiscated everything that was radioactive and stored it for the bow of the ship. After the inspection and after the confiscation, we got our sailing orders to come back to the States. And after we left Pearl Harbor, roughly about 3 miles outside just beyond the 3-mile limit, all of the radioactivity, active material was dumped overboard into the ocean. And then when I got back to the States, I had approximately a month to go on my term, and they discharged me for the ass carry back to the receiving ship in San Diego, and on December 28th, I was discharged.
Okay. What year was that?
I'm sorry?
What year?
You want me to get your papers?
1948.
Okay, fine. So what did you do after the service? What did you do after the
I
military?
went to college,
Did you? Oh, you use your
and under the GI Bill. Right. And I studied accounting. My major was accounting. And once I graduated, a two-year college, by the way. Once I graduated from in the accounting course, I went to work for. I went back to work for Raytheon.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so
And that's my story.
do you have any medals or citations?
You have one medal.
Yeah, there are some medals and there's some medals, but they're meaningless. They're theater medals and that sort of thing.
Okay, I just have a few more questions for you.
Huh?
Yes,
I have-
good question.
I just have a few more questions.
There's a few more questions.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Did you have all the supplies that you needed while you were on duty?
You have all the supplies that you needed while you were on duty.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Did you ever experience a lot of pressure or stress?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, just two more questions. How did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
I had a great time while I was in the service.
Okay. All right. All right. And
I want to tell you, I was 17 years old when I went to Washington, D.C. And the women, the female population, outnumbered the men by like 8-1. And the men, the unfortunate part about it was some of the men in Washington, D.C., like little boys.
Oh, God.
So I didn't only have 18 women or 8 women, 8.5 women. I had upwards of 16 women. And so I had a great time in Washington, D.C. That's why I had to get the heck out of there. In Washington, D.C., they had a party 365 days out of the year. And at these parties, you could meet from the highest to the lowest. And I was like in a chocolate factory. A 17-year-old kid turned loose in a chocolate factory.
okay.
Too much.
Okay, just one more question.
No, I didn't do that.
No, I don't know if I'm going to believe you now or not.
I'm sorry?
That's okay. Here we go. How did your service and experiences affect your life? Last question.
How did your service experience affect your life?
Well, if it hadn't been for the experiences that I encountered on my service life, I wouldn't have gone to college and probably got an accounting degree. And it was up in Massachusetts, and they did not require certification at the time I graduated. So they had to offer me a PA without having to take a government test. And public accountant, PA, public accountant. I wouldn't have had that experience. I wouldn't have had that opportunity, probably. And probably the best part of my experience in the service was the ability, or the even though I didn't have any control of where I went, I saw an awful lot of damn things I would never have seen otherwise or been exposed to.
Okay. Well,
So it was a great, that's why I said somewhere in the dialogue that I enjoyed all the time that I was in service, particularly when we were underway.
what do you mean when you were on the way? You mean on the ship?
Aboard ship.
Right. Mhm.
traveling to various places.
Did you maintain any of your friendships after the service?
The as Gary came into Boston um, after I got out of college and was working at Raytheon, and a couple of the crewmen came and seen me at that. I don't even know how they got there,
Okay.
quite honestly, but they did.
Okay.
So the Ascari came from the West Coast over to the East Coast, and where it went from there, I don't know. But most of the men people I was with and I lived with, uh, the experience stopped when I got out of the Navy.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank you for a fabulous interview.
Thank you for putting up with me.
It's all good, Michael. It's all good.